Welcome back to Ned Conger on YouTube. I've recently moved to Hutchinson Island in Stuart, Florida, and I have a beautiful view of the Indian River Lagoon looking to the west. The only disagreeable feature of this area is that occasionally polluted water is dumped into the St. Lucie River, which connects a little bit with the Indian River, and pollutes it with a lot of toxins and algae and too much nitrogen and too much arsenic and pesticides that are caused by overflow from the sugar fields and other farmland upstream. I have an idea that might help counter this, and I know that our Congressman Brian Mast is very interested in developing a solution to this problem. I was living with my cousins in Stuart before I moved here, and every day I used to walk down to the St. Lucie Lock on the canal that brings water from Lake Okeechobee into the St. Lucie River, and I watched the turbid, ugly water squirting through the locks there. I didn't experience the bad algae odor that they did a few years ago, but I can understand how that has happened, and many of my friends told me about it, and they'd sure like to avoid it. I think we might be able to avoid it by implementing one of the chapters in my book, Thinking Outside the Oven, Concomitant Concepts and Synergistic Solutions for the 21st Century. It's published by iUniverse. It's available on Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. Chapter 9 talks about flood control and water quality. And in fact, you can also find an article in the Charleston, West Virginia Gazette Mail that was adapted on this, talking about flood control in West Virginia. And my basic idea is to create little impoundments on the sides, on the banks of every stream that feeds into Lake Okeechobee. There are several rivers that are very flat land, but still, when there's heavy rain, they overflow, and they take a lot of the pesticides and herbicides and fertilizer and everything else into the lake, where it is really polluting that lake and the waters of the St. Lucie River. If we implemented some of the ideas I have in Chapter 9, I think we could reduce that, because a lot of these impurities would stay in this sort of waffle-shaped array of impoundments on either side of every little ditch, every little creek, every little river that feeds in, so that when the water overflows the banks, some of that water would be retained, and the silt and all of these impurities would remain in the land there and work their way out instead of dumping into the St. Lucie River. I realize that this is a difficult new idea for many people, but if you remember the words of John Locke, who said, "New opinions are always suspected and usually opposed without any other reason but because they are not already common." Thanks for listening.